Humans exist in an objective world, yet we simultaneously live in the parallel reality of our subjective experiences of this world. In this narrative layer of reality, we make symbols that represent facets of this objective world, and then use these symbols to exchange information with other subjective viewpoints in order to get closer to rightly perceiving objective reality. This is essentially map making. We make a word, which is a map for its definition, and the definition is a map to an idea. Likewise, the letters or grapheme of a word are maps for the sounds they represent. As humans, we are subjectively able to abstract, which is to say, build a map of the complexity around us into a usable tool to collaborate with other subjective experiences. The word quote-unquote tree is not the tree. It is simply a map we can use to find it. This has infinite benefits when the subjective individuals are working from a similar goal. The issue in our modern materialist world is we live in duplicitous and contradictory tension within these two basic compartments of reality. One of these realities, the material, explains what something is, while the other, the narrative layer, describes what something means. This relatively recent understanding of the material world as a cold, dead, and meaningless thing that our narratives breathe the warm life of meaning into has struck a schism in our collective psyche and sparked such disastrous consequences we are only now beginning to realize as they come into view. This separation of our narrative reality from our physical reality has allowed us to abstract out archetypal or essential structures of narrative as distinct from their physical or idiosyncratic manifestations. This is helpful and necessary in our comprehension of reality. However, in the modern world, as Nietzsche so poignantly understood, we've severed the branches of our material world so fundamentally from the root of their meaning that we have completely hamstrung our ability to comprehend a cohesive where or why we are. To the modern mind, meaning is fundamentally an intellectual pursuit, and the intellect is by all accounts a floating ghost out in some utterly immaterial realm. Further, because we do not collectively share a map of values, save for the value that everyone is free to build their own values, we exist in a necessary relativism that clouds our ability to use symbols. Language needs to be homogeneous to be shared. If every individual is speaking their own idiosyncratic language, of which they personally defined each vocabulary word, no one could understand one another, and thus no one could share their personal map of reality to be scrutinized and added to the whole. The practical results of this, which I will delve into further in a moment, can be very well understood through the example of a person whose mind has decoupled the process of eating from the nutrition eating provides. We've seen extreme examples of this decoupling, allowing confused folks to eat objects like cloth or toilet paper under their reframing of these things as food, which may stabilize the internal logic of their own narrative, but hinders them from engaging in the objective world in a manner that would lead to their benefit. If they only eat toilet paper, though they call it food, they will die. The modern mind is able to fantastically exist in the abstract layer of narrative so fully as never before seen in history. We are free to paint the external world in whatever way we wish from the subjective vantage of our own minds, fueled by the magic and illusory substance something like the internet provides. When you create a divergent personal reality, or put simply, when you lie, you need to bend narratives to fit your purposes. This network of narrative only works if all subjective agents within the narrative agree. This is aptly illustrated in the fable, The Emperor's New Clothes. The naked emperor is only able to continue his farce so long as everyone plays along. Farces like this are narratives that run at variance with objective reality, and these lies exist and only can exist within the narrative layer of human interactions, like a web spun between the minds of subjective experiencers. The grandest network of these interactions is found today in the internet. And while the internet can be intensely useful for map making, it is also a magic capable of proliferating and buttressing lies to an extent never before seen in history. Each individual can now magically shape their identity in the minds of others, running PR and propaganda campaigns with terrifying efficiency. Everyone is now a witch or a wizard king of their own personal fiefdom, free to bend the truth among their constituency of followers in whatever manner they see fit. The power of magic tricks only exists in the perceptions of others, and thus, to modern magicians, or put bluntly, every modern individual, the power of the internet is far too tempting, for it is a massive web of human perception, a floating narrative layer that can put frames on top of objective reality. And while all lies have a shelf life, like a wave running out of steam upon the shore, some waves are large, and the crashing of these waves can be catastrophic. Likewise, some lies, while false, can be in reality extremely dangerous. The emperor might not actually have clothes on, but for so long as the mob indulges in the lie, they are acting like he does. However, calling a tiger a kitty cat does not make the tiger less dangerous, but it does, however, make you worse at surviving it. You can close your eyes and plug your ears and say it's not happening, but the truth is, you are bound by the rules of objective reality. On a global and cultural level, we are currently suffering the consequences of this disunity. We are like the metaphor of the 5 blind men and the elephant, if each had been propagandized into how our individual interpretation is the only valid one. Thus, the process of revealing reality becomes simply a battle for frame. We've cut our teleological Yggdrasil into such unrecognizable parts that we can no longer distinguish the pieces that make up the trunk from the roots or the branches. And it is in this state of quote-unquote free play, as Derrida called it, that we are free to lose our minds and our lives as we call the quote-unquote bark of this tree its fruit, and then starve when our naming of a thing does not gnostically imbue the thing with nutrition. I'll use the examples of a modern church service and of a Comic-Con. The church service claims that its intent is to worship a god and to engage in genuine spiritual practices. This structure defines the terms quote-unquote God and quote-unquote spirit within a narrative that only vaguely manifests practically in the real world. What I mean is, the church service utilizes terms whose functionality is landlocked within its narrative representation. This is like saying Luke Skywalker is a Jedi Knight and he's super powerful and can stop evil. In this example, Luke Skywalker, the Force, etc., and their ability to manifest change and stop evil sound great and work perfectly within the fantasy physics of the narrative Star Wars. However, when the Star Wars fan is stopped by a police officer for speeding, he or she does not attempt to use the Jedi mind trick to get out of a ticket. The fan is snapped back to the real world where the physics of the fantasy do not work. In my view, this is similar to how modern church services understand the definitions of their terms. Specifically, terms like God or Spirit. They are words whose values mostly apply within the layer of fantasy that are role-played within on Sunday. And at best, these terms only vaguely apply in a tangible way to the real world. This draining of the nutrients of meaning and purpose within the religious institution then seems to cause the mass binging on the junk food variant found in media and entertainment. This brings me to my second example of a Comic-Con. With a Comic-Con, you have a ritual celebration of what we dubiously call entertainment. The folks who pay money to attend are generally fans of some form of entertainment, like a comic book, film, video game, etc. These fans often boast a scholar-like knowledge of the comic, film, or games universe they are a fan of. They can recite quotes from characters, dates, remember obscure names and details, etc. Some attendees even invest more money to create elaborate costumes to look and act like the hero or villain they are loyal to. There is an incredible amount of time, energy, and resources spent in devotion to what these attendees curiously brand as entertainment. If it is just entertainment, is madness the only explanation for the amount of time, energy, and finances being utilized in praise of it? When extrapolating what someone's life purpose is, we generally observe what they've spent the most time on or energy in pursuit of, and then build a narrative to understand this main character as either succeeding according to their goal or as being a failure. When something takes a great percentage of your life, it is no longer a pastime. It is a life's purpose. And what is a goal or object of desire that defines one's purpose, meditation of thought, and sacrifice, other than an object of worship? As with my frustration with the terms God and Spirit in the modern church, terms like quote-unquote fan or quote-unquote entertainment here are framed within the materialist paradigm a certain way, and yet functionally bear far too many similarities to me with words like devotee, believer, theologian, and religion. This is another subject I will expound on later, but suffice it to say that I believe this amorphous mishmash of terms, ideas, and meanings we find ourselves in the post-modern age, is why so many folks seem lost, unsatisfied, etc. We utilize our religious services for entertainment and emotional outlets, and our theologians appear more akin to zealous Lord of the Rings fans who are excited to flex their knowledge of obscure elvish words or correct your pronunciation of the word Kirithungol, all the while imbibing craft beer and role-playing as bearded scholars of some bygone age. While conversely, our quote-unquote secular fans of entertainment spend far more money in devotion to their religion and are far more knowledgeable on their sacred texts, i.e. comics, films, games, etc., than any churchgoer is to their own. In the face of all of this, one could sadly conclude that our participation in and interaction with all aspects of our modern lives has been reduced and relegated into what could rightly be called LARPing or cosplay. For those uninitiated, LARPing stands for live action role-playing, and cosplay is a portmanteau of costume play. I use these examples because they are common occurrences at modern Comic-Cons, and possibly an updated variant on the artistic pejorative hypocrite used, for example, to describe the Pharisees in the New Testament. Coincidentally, hypocrite was simply the Greek word for actor or stage player, and not of itself derogatory, though it has come to be in modern use. This general approach to life as a form of LARPing or cosplay has blurred the line between the religious and secular so much that one could watch a video from a Comic-Con spliced with shots from a modern megachurch's worship service or even a political rally, and amidst the lights, exuberance, raised hands, and adults weeping, the only giveaway that these aren't the same event would be the lightsabers. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with finding meaning in entertainment. In fact, I'd advocate for it, and I'm not suggesting our religious services should lack any emotion or entertainment value. What I am saying is that our understandings of the roles of these institutions and the definition of terms within them is so confused and so unhealthy that it is hamstringing the value that both could provide. When we cosplay or act for the majority of our lives, whether unconsciously or not, we not only deprive ourselves from genuine connection, but we deprive the art form from being of use. When everything is an act, we no longer remember what the fiction of acting was a facsimile of or a vessel for. One of these problematic counterbalances that manifests is the redefining of words, signs, symbols, etc. to reinforce the security and comfort of the known, while alleviating the unquenchable desire for exploration and meaning. The image that comes to mind to me here is the trope of the millennial mommy GF Instagram influencer. She finds a stable, simple, and controllable man to fund her Instagram career, as she posts thirst traps to strangers, like a domesticated house cat staring longingly out the window, imagining what life could have been like as a tiger. Her prioritization of safety came at the cost of truth. I'm going to deconstruct and analyze this archetype in a later video, but the point here is that the desire for safety apart from meaning and truth, when fulfilled, leads the heart to long for the danger of meaning. After all, if you can dupe a partner into committing to you, then they're dupable. And if they're dupable, you don't respect them. And if you don't respect them, you'll seek out one you do. For strangers, to her mind, speak more for truth than her husband does. An example of another way this confusion problematically manifests could be acting like you're a musician or dressing up and telling others that you are does not mean you are good at music. You may know everything about every band or artist in the world, can recite endless theory, and believe it with all your heart that a genre is better than another. But none of this will have produced a song. None of this has made you a musician. And further, all of this time and energy spent in curating the image of a musician is time and energy you could have spent on actually making music. If your cultural context calls a spoon a knife, everything is fine on the superficial level. But if you practically need to cut something, you will conclude that knives don't actually work. Or if you try to eat a computer thinking that it's food, you will be unsatisfied with its nutritional value and completely miss the value a computer could provide. So then, what is real life? What is a real human? And what defines the purpose that denotes them as such? And what are we supposed to do here?